All right, y'all, KJ back in the studio, coming live. So I had a special request from Rusty's Garage, but it has nothing to do with cars. So we got Russ on the line. What's going on, Russ? How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing all right.
I love it already. Rusty, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, big guy. I'm here. I'm ready to go.
All right, buddy. So you reached out to me and said, "Hey, we have to do this podcast with two gentlemen that I know." So I'm gonna let you do the introduction. We already kind of worked with Dan a little bit and warmed up the mics and stuff like that, and Russ jumped on. But can you give the audience a quick introduction and why we needed to hear from these gentlemen?
So basically, Dan and I have known each other now for 7 years, going on 8. He actually lived with us out in Virginia for a couple of years. We've done a lot of work together, electrical work, mechanical work. The man has a lot of knowledge when it comes into the legal world. And so the big thing with Dan, he's out to help people. He sees somebody that needs assistance. He helped me. I've helped him in matters. But he met Russell when he moved out to Oregon. And Russell's got a pretty amazing / terrible story at the same time that he needs to get out to the public and explain what's happened to him. And I want Dan to kind of, bring him into the situation and let him tell his story, what's going on out there in Oregon and these bad people he just mentioned, that have done some terrible things to him over the last couple of years. And I want him to tell his story.
All right, badass. So before you bring us in, Dan, and bring Big Russell into the picture about his story, for the listeners, this is our first official Kicking It with KJ Menage a Trois, a.k.a. foursome. So we've got us on some merged calls. But anyways, Big Dan, go ahead. The mic is yours, and we're going to just go impromptu and run with this, okay?
Yeah, just real quick, because I don't want to take any time away from Russell, because it's all about him and letting him speak, because he needs that the most. But just as an introduction, I met Russell doing some electrical work for him, and he had explained a scenario to me about his land that he owns there in Northern California, there in Siskiyou County. It's got a family cabin out there. It's been in the family for, I think, almost close to 70 years, since the 1950s. But he had told me a little bit about the situation, because I was looking for a place to live while I try to figure out how I'm going to heal and recover from my own injuries from an automobile collision that took place. But he was really, really helpful to me. He actually saved me from being homeless in the middle of summer, in the middle of drought weather, while I was actually being thrown onto the streets. So when Russell had told me about the situation and how his neighbors have, basically tried to, in my opinion, steal his land away from him by telling everybody in the community that, his land was just a life estate and all this other stuff. It just got really, really awkward. Because the neighbors were blocking the easement by erecting fences and digging holes in the road. And it just got really, really, really super awkward. But Russell doesn't deserve anything that's happened to him at all, in any kind of way, shape, form, or fashion. It's just a terrible situation where, he's up against the power structure there, because one of the neighbors has a son who is a deputy district attorney there in Siskiyou County. And I personally don't like the way the sheriff's department has acted in the situation either. And I know Russell is going to tell us all about all the different things, kind of from start to finish. Just telling us a little bit about, his family and how him and his brother and sister came into the land, and then how they were away for some number of years. And then one day when they, went back, there was a fence basically built over the road, the easement road. Basically, it's their driveway. It's not like in a city driveway where you've got some concrete or something you pull into your house. This road just happens to be, approximately, I'd say about a quarter of a mile long or so. And, with fences being, built across and erected across the road, on a deed and easement, it just got really, really super alarming as to how we were going to do anything about it. So there's a lot of horror stories here that I know Russell's going to get into, but instead of me sharing all the details, Russell, why don't you go ahead and just tell everybody what's on your mind, man.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me on this podcast. It's always good to be able to talk about this story and try to get the word out. It's just so crazy, the things that I've been through, and I think a lot of people don't realize that if they have some situation where they're on an easement, they could find themselves in the same position as me, if they have ugly neighbors the way I do. I guess what has happened to me is pretty rare that, usually neighbors, try to be friendly with one another and don't try to stab each other in the back. But these people, it seems that after my mother died in 1992, they kind of used that as an opportunity to eliminate the easement that we had on their property, or to try to. And they didn't want to do it in any legal method, through courts, because it's expensive to do it. And so they just started blocking our driveway. And back in the 90s, one of the neighbors filed a fraudulent document that removed our easement clause from his deed. And he used
You guys there?
What happened?
All right. So when I found out about this whole hornet's nest, simply by arriving at the place, and I had a truck full of all of my stuff, and my nephew was following me in another truck that was full of stuff.
That was in 2017, right?
I'm sorry?
That was in 2017, right?
Well, that would have been May of 2018. So I spent 2017 in Stockton waiting for the weather to warm up enough to where I could move up here. So I waited until May of 2018 and then brought my trucks of stuff to the property. And when I arrived, there was a fence across the road. Our gate was gone. And then there was also a large trench dug in the road with the backhoe.
It was a crater-sized hole.
Yeah, at that time it was a bit smaller.
They dug it deeper?
Yeah, and I filled it in. And that's when the sheriff's department came in. So I filled in the hole with the shovel, and my sister helped me. And I was just about to cut the fence and drive my truck across and bring my stuff up to the property. And that's when the sheriff came out. And this was a Saturday. And so he asked me, please, don't force the issue here. Come back on Monday, show me the paperwork, and tell me everything that's going on. And, we'll figure out what to do at that point when the courthouse was open and we could get a hold of all the documents and things. And so I agreed to do that, stupidly, met with the sheriff the following Monday and showed him the documents. And at this point, I really wasn't aware of everything that was going on. I hadn't seen all the documents of all the properties involved. I just, knew a little slice of it. So I showed him our documents, and then we went to the courthouse. I pulled up the paperwork that showed that my family still owns the property because the neighbors were claiming that we no longer owned it. And then we went to a title company and talked to the manager there, who read our easement and said, yeah, this easement is totally valid. It can't even be abandoned. But still, after all that, the sheriff still would not allow me onto the property. The deputy would not allow me onto the property.
Do you recall the name of that sheriff's deputy for Siskiyou County Sheriff's Department?
I don't recall the name offhand, but I do have the incident report, a copy of that. So his name should be in that incident report.
And that was what? You said May approximately 2018?
Yes. And since I was unable to get to my property, I had to put all my stuff in storage. I had a trailer that I had to put in storage, a motorcycle, just all my belongings. And so for the next year, after a while, I thought this issue would be cleared up and I would get a chance to get my stuff onto the property. But after a couple of months passed, that window of time needed to get into the property and be able to clean up and rehabilitate the cabin and make it livable space, that window had closed. And now, it's getting to be too cold again for me to move there. And so I had to move to Klamath Falls, Oregon, and stay there for the year. And then
still talking 2018 or
what's that?
Are we still talking 2018? Because I had met you in approximately August of 2018.
Yes. Yeah. So basically all that that I had mentioned kind of occurred before I had met you. Once I put all my stuff in storage, then I was kind of just floating around, and I was hanging out with a friend who has a place in Medford, and that's when I got in touch with you.
Yeah, I remember I went to that place in Medford quite a few times with you and some other friends of yours there in Medford as well.
So I got a question, right? So it seemed like everything was pretty good, at least from the surface level. And then you said when your mom passed, things just drastically changed. Like, what do you think do you have any, what do you think caused that?
Well, I mean, my guess is that they just saw it as a good opportunity, that if you have a property that has an easement on it, the property is a little less valuable because you basically don't own all the rights to your own property. You're allowing other people to use part of your property. So if you can eliminate an easement on your property, it makes it more valuable. And I think that's pretty much their main motivation.
So
can you give can I put my spin in there real quick?
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
So, Russell, is it okay for me to name names?
Yeah, I don't care.
All right. Well, so, and I talked with Russell about this. There's things that can be proven, and then there's things that are still speculation. But the bottom line is that there's a property before you get to Russell's property off of Miners Creek Road in Etna, California. There's two separately owned pieces of land,
right,
before you actually make it to Russell's 10 acres. Now, granted, they just, it's, totally a deeded easement. Russell and his family own that easement road. It's a deeded easement. It's not prescriptive or any kind of, permission that somebody just handed somebody. It's an actual, right click on properties. It's an actual, asset. The actual deeded road is an actual asset, and it crosses over two people's properties. But
right.
it's all clearly spelled out. Well, the guy that lives closest to Miners Creek Road just happens to be a real estate agent, and his name is Dan Deppen, Deppen, and that's in Section 22. And then there's another guy by the name of Don Phelps, who owns a bunch of land surrounding the little 10-acre plot that Russell and his family have. It's like a couple of 100 acres basically surrounding this plot, this 10-acre plot that Russell and his family own. And I said, okay, so Russell's 10-acre land is way off the beaten path. And, what's a real estate agent, by the name of Dan Deppen, trying to fence off his land and block the easement road to Russell Farnsworth's family's property. What's the motive? I'm like, well, if I was a real estate agent, I'd want to build a house up there and sell it and make some money. What else could the motive possibly be?
Right.
Just fence off or fence around your land in such a way that, destroys an easement. And I thought to myself, well, I've heard stories along the way over the years where, people will go build fences outside of their land and try to claim land that way,
Right.
And these two guys, they're old. They were most probably thinking that they could just, build a fence and pretend it doesn't exist anymore, use use a corrective deed filing in the county recorder's office to make it look like the deed, to make it look like the deeded easement no longer existed. And, there's just so many, clear cut, intentions that can be shown. But, I know right now we're just kind of trying to talk about the storyline and how the events have taken place, coming back from the 1950s when Russell's mom came into the property, from the older guy that I think he's dead now. I think he died in '84, Al Fugestaller, and ultimately how that all transpires and comes forward. But the immediate action piece of this whole podcast, this whole recording here, is to draw attention to the idea that you got to remember, like in 2017, is that would it be safe to say, Russell, that in 2017 the fence and the gate, or the fence, I should say, it wasn't a problem, that you could still access the property? Or
yeah, that was true as far as at least up until November of 2017. So it occurred between November of 2017, which was the last time I was there, and May of 2018.
Okay, that's good. November 2017, then you were able to just freely drive the big deeded easement road driveway from Miners Creek Road, Etna, California, USA, all the way up there to your cabin.
Correct.
There in section 27.
Yep.
No obstructions, no firewood, no holes, no fences,
no
booby traps, no landmines, no sand pits, nothing. Just
no
enjoy it like you did. Yeah, just totally enjoy it, just like you did when you was a kid, just coming home with your mom.
Yeah.
Wow. And then you come back there May approximately 2018, and all of a sudden some land rustler cowboys decide that they're going to try to occupy and take over your land with their invading forces, maintain barriers along your easement. Well, Russell's got 10 acres.
That's a lot of acres to just try to steal it. That's awful.
Right, and it sounds like to me like if you do the math, because I mean, I don't know. Like, going back to my question on on the motives, I mean, you can only speculate that it almost felt like a hostile takeover with people who kind of knew how to do it without it looking illegal. Is that a fair thing to say?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which was the primary purpose of using a corrective deed in California to correct an error or omission, but the corrective deed that Van Deppen used was fraudulent because, and Russell knows that story better than I do.
Yeah, well, a corrective deed in the state of California is meant to correct like misspellings and things of that nature that end up in a deed. So it's intended to correct errors and not to change the terms of the agreement. But this corrective deed that Dan Deppen filed, changed the terms of the agreement. It removed our easement clause from the document.
Oh, so wow. Okay.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, it's a big deal because Russell, when I met Russell, I was just being this electrician and having some problems of my own because I'm disabled American and needed a place to stay at the same time because I was being thrown out. So Russell Farnsworth saved my life. Okay. And as I'm learning all this, learning about the situation, I had learned over the years how to just kind of peel things back and take a look at it, see if whether or not it matched up with due process of law, whether or not it matched up with anything that follows the traditions and our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution and all this other good stuff that we have in law. And I'm like, wait a second here, something's not adding up. Because we're looking through the records, the county recorder's office for the land. We're looking at all the records and trying to figure out, well, is there some kind of a glitch in the records that would allow Dan Deppen, the real estate tycoon, one of Russell's neighbors there, is there some kind of a glitch in the paperwork that would allow him to take control of the easement road.
Mm-hmm.
And as we looked together, because me and Russell was going back and forth to the county recorder's office, as we looked through every one of the documents connected to his 10-acre parcel that his family owns, it was like, no, this is clearly a deeded easement road, and there shouldn't have been any kind of problems, none whatsoever,
Right.
not even a letter, not even like, hey, look, we think we own your land or something. It was an totally ironclad deed to the land, the road, everything was, all the T's were crossed, all the I's were dotted. And then like Russell was talking about with this corrective deed, that this real estate agent by the name of Daniel R. Deppen, this real estate agent, Mr. Deppen, goes in and files this corrective deed into the county recorder's office, public record, to make it appear as though the deeded easement for the Farnsworth family estate had vanished, disappeared, or never existed.
Wow.
As if it had never existed. Okay. And we kept on looking through every little document that we looked at, all the old map books going back to 1850, and just everything that we could look at. And we collected this all together, and we were like, oh, they're trying to steal the land. Daniel R. Deppen is trying to steal the land, theft by deception, larceny by trickery.
Wow.
It's clear. It's clear. What other motives could he possibly have? Oh, well, Mr. Deppen was most probably just out and about on his land, mining and tending to his fences, and just forgot to look that there was a road right there that leads up to the Farnsworth cabins. That was ultimately burned to the ground in January of year 2020, which is why we're on this call right now.
Wow. So,
so everything was good. And these two old cowboys, neighbors of, Russell's Farnsworth there, by the name of Don Phelps and Dan R. Deppen, they literally tried to convince everybody in the community there in Etna, surrounding, just right there in Scott Valley. They've tried to convince everybody that it was just a life estate, and it was a prescriptive easement, and they had no rights to, the Russell's family had no rights to the 10-acre parcel, that it was just, I forgot the term. Oh, they tried to say that Don Phelps specifically told me that land is landlocked. Landlocked. That's the excuse.
California doesn't like landlocked properties to exist, because they want people to be able to develop their land and then pay taxes to the state.
Exactly. And Russell, we found the case law. Me and Russell together found the case law that supported the easement, and how it didn't support landlock, and we just started peeling it back. Going to the county recorder's office, looking at all the documentation, looking at all the map books, and just saying, what? How does this really look from the outside looking in? If you've never seen the situation, it looks like somebody's trying to steal somebody's land, theft by deception, larceny by trickery, by filing fraudulent filings into the county recorder's office in Siskiyou County, while acting as an agent, as a real estate agent for the state of California.
How's that allowed to happen? How is that allowed to happen?
Well, there was this judge in Orange County, California in 2012 that came out and said all of the district attorney agents there in Orange County, Orange County has this, district attorney's office, and they had 70-something attorneys working for that office. And, there's just a lot of corruption. When you say how something like this happens, there's just a lot of corruption and there's not enough watchers watching the watchers.
Mm.
You know, that's how. And look, you know, Etna, California is just a little small, you know, rural town with mostly just rural farmland and unpasteurized and pasteurized land. I mean, you know, it's just a bunch of raw land. You know, it's just a bunch of people really living, you know, like it's still the old West. So, you know, when Russell first told me the situation about how the sheriff's department had handled the situation, I was just like, so how can the sheriff's department trust one person over another person? You know, to even try to, you know, Russell, did you say that sheriff's officer told you that if you go back up there, they arrest you, or?
I have been told that by the sheriff's department, yes. And, you know, a lot of it that I haven't gotten into yet, I guess between the time that I tried to get onto the property and the time that I had met Dan and allowed him to go stay up at the property for a while, but between those two events, the cabin had been burglarized, vandalized, and ransacked, and they pried the top off of our little hand-dug well that we have. We've got a mountain spring on the property, and they pried off the top of our well and threw a dead animal carcass in it. So they did all of that, and when I called the sheriff's department and said that I wanted to report these things, they wouldn't allow me to report it because they said, well, Dan Deppen came in here. He told us you don't own the property. And so, you know, we don't even believe that you own the place.
And because everything that happened with the paperwork, there was nothing to prove that it was yours anymore.
Well, there was. I mean, I did eventually go to the courthouse and get the documents and then go to the sheriff's department and show them the documents and prove that we still have the property. But, you know, it's like every little thing has just been a big obstacle because everybody's misinformed. They don't know what the hell they're doing. You know, they've heard all these lies and rumors. So,
yeah, they're being misled by a real estate agent who supposedly knows what he's doing. And it's like, really? The sheriff's department is biased and prejudiced to the point where they're going to believe a real estate agent by the name of Dan R. Deppen, who lives on California. They're going to believe him over the guy who's, you know, not, I don't know what's the best way to put that. You know, Russell Farnsworth is just your everyday average American, you know, guy. You know, he's, you know, he's just Russell Farnsworth. He doesn't have like a past where he holds public office or something. He doesn't have, you know, some fancy agency like a real estate license or something like that. He's just, you know, somebody trying to do the best he can with his life. You know, he doesn't have any special credentials. He doesn't come from a family that has any kind of special credentials or anything. He doesn't have a background where he has family in the intelligence community. You know, so it's like, no wonder they're stepping on him. When I say they, I'm talking about the power structure in Siskiyou County, California.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very...
One of the reasons I'm in such a precarious circumstance is that I was living in Los Angeles in 2017, but I have a horrible spine condition, and eventually I got even, you know, things got so bad that I couldn't even continue to work my desk job that I had there. And so I essentially retired and I cashed out all of my retirement accounts and brought the cash up here. And the idea was I would move on to this property. I would build a small little eco-friendly house on the property. And then I would be able to work out and rehabilitate my body and maybe even go back to work at some point.
Right.
But, you know, this dispute has prevented all of that from happening. I never built the house. I never was able to rehabilitate myself because I was running to the courthouse and trying to look up documents and chase all these, you know, all these different claims and try to figure out what the heck is going on. So none of that ever happened. And the year that I was living in Klamath Falls and had to pay to keep all my stuff in storage, I ended up burning through all the money that I had. So by the time I moved onto the property in May of 2019, I had $300 to my name, and that was it. And I still needed to buy a solar system. And so I was able to get a cheap solar system from Harbor Freight. But so that was, that's another issue is just the fact that I came up here just completely, with nothing. I had no resources whatsoever, and they've just taken every advantage of that. And they knew this because I had taken them to court for a restraining order. And, of course, I had to tell the judge that I didn't have a job, that I was broke. I hadn't worked in 3 years. And I think at that time it was about 2.5 years that I'd been without a job. And so what does the neighbor do next? Or I suspect the neighbor was behind it. They burned the cabin down. And so I lose almost everything that I owned in that cabin. And so then I was even worse off. Now I didn't even have a place where I could work out and do physical therapy,
Right.
So I had things that I could have sold, valuable, music equipment, and just all kinds of crazy things that I could have sold and made money, and it all just went up in flames.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that,
man.
Yeah, and he's just really lucky they didn't get the camper that time, but then they tried to burn him out a second time 6 months later in year 2020. So, but coming back to the fire, we need to set the listeners onto the video capture that took place, because we were able to set up the video cameras. I was really worried about Russell and what they were doing to him, and how the local power structure in the county was responding to the little tremors and stuff.
Right.
They were always on Dan R. Deppin's side. They were always on Don Phelps' side. They were never on Russell Farnsworth's side. They were never giving Russell Farnsworth any benefit of the faith.
Well, before you go forward, Dan, you mentioned video of the burning. Like, is there somewhere where that can be found?
Yeah, Russell, tell them about your YouTube channel and how we've been trying to develop videos and stuff for people to see what the hell's really going on.
Yeah, thanks. So I created a YouTube channel. Gosh, I think it's called Cabin Creek Etna.
Well, it's underneath your name as Russ Farnsworth.
Yeah. And, I should know the channel, but it's actually all pretty new. But I have put up several videos on the channel so far. So it kind of shows the easement road going from the county road up to our property. There's videos of that, and the videos show the obstructions that the neighbors have put in the road. So all of that is there. And
well, let me finish telling them how to find the YouTube channel first, okay?
Go ahead.
All right. So Russell made a YouTube channel. It's called Russ Farnsworth. That's spelled R-U-S-S, and then F-A-R-N-S-W-O-R-T-H. Now, there's a couple of Russ Farnsworth there on YouTube. Just have the listeners look for Russ Farnsworth. It's a picture of, I would describe Russell as a middle-aged man with a little bit of a beard, kind of bald, and he's got a picture of him and his dog watching for his main YouTube channel, and he's only got about 7 videos up so far. But there is a video of the cabin being burned to the ground. Now, CAL FIRE has taken possession of 2 video cameras that actually show 3 grown males that actually lit and burnt the cabin to the ground. But unfortunately, CAL FIRE has not released the video footage of the 3 males who actually burned the cabin to the ground at this point in time for unknown reasons. At this point, somehow I guess the investigation is still somewhat secretive or something. I'm not entirely sure about that, but people could go to YouTube
put in Russ Farnsworth and just look for the Russ Farnsworth channel that shows a man with long head and nice. Is Watts a pit bull, Russell?
Yeah, I believe he's part pit bull and part American bulldog.
Okay, yeah, he's kind of a white dog with I think a gold patch over one eye, right?
He's got him over both eyes.
Yeah.
Well, and you can
and
also
be able to actually.
You can also send the link to Rusty, and he can send me the link, and I can put it in the description.
Oh, we'll do.
That's awesome. Yep, we'll take care of it.
And someone mentioned that 10 acres is a good, size of property, and it really is, especially for somebody coming from living in Los Angeles. But these guys up here, look, Don Phelps owns 235 acres just right in that area, plus a bunch of other properties around the county. And Dan Deppen owns, I believe, 60 acres in the area and also other properties throughout the county. So, it's nothing. It's really nothing to them. And that's one of the things that makes this all so frustrating is they've got hundreds of acres, each of them. So the fact that they're causing me all this drama over our little 10 acres is just really frustrating. And Dan Deppen's property, our easement road, just cuts a tiny little corner of his property. In fact, when he had blocked the road, he had hired somebody to bring in a cat and dig a bunch of trenches in the road.
When you say cat, are you talking about some kind of heavy machinery?
Yeah, Caterpillar. And so I rented a Bobcat and went out there, and I spent 6 hours working on the road, and I was almost finished by the time he even knew that I was there and came down. So obviously I could go in and out without him ever knowing, and so why they even care is just ridiculous. They're causing all of this drama.
You're not even disturbing anybody when you even travel your deeded easement road that leads to the 10 acres that was all, issued to you and your family back in the late 50s and then ultimately finalized in the estate when Al Fugestaller had passed away. The deeded easement road was clearly flagged out, by the original owners of the land. So, I don't understand or even comprehend or can't even begin to fathom or imagine why a real estate tycoon and some old guy with a bunch of money who has a son that just happens to be a deputy district attorney for Siskiyou County. I don't understand why, why they would, even think that they could try to get around any of that. But, when I say that, I'm talking about the deeded easement clause in everybody's deed. The easement clause of the whole road and everything it's in Dan Deppen, it's in Dan Deppen's deed. It's in Don Phelps's deed. It's as clear as day. It's ironclad. There's no way. There's no wiggle room. But the why factor is it's beyond, and I think it's beyond the idea of just trying to develop a potential real estate market in Section 22 and Section 27. It might just be pure greed. We don't know yet. But we know we got two old white guys with white privilege who either knew or should have known that deeded easement road exists and is, tangible property.
Yeah, I think it's
the guy wants.
There's a lot. It seems like there's a lot of potential rationale behind it, but none of it sounds like anything good for the little guy.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what when I started this podcast was based on like who's going to stand up for the little guy. I always watch the big guy get richer and the big guy endorse and strat another big guy. And so I think it's pretty awesome. Dan, you're pretty passionate about this. I am curious, like, what is your why for being so passionate? Like I said, I do things because I've always liked to stand up for the little guy. You're very passionate and you're very actually knowledgeable about this particular situation. And besides the fact that you were an electrician for Russell, What drove you to like being like, oh hell no?
You know, when I met Russell, you know, he really didn't have access to all the documents. So we went back and forth to the county recorder's office, and as we collected all these documents, Russell's consciousness of everything grew. He was able to see, like, this is what they did to, you know, convince the sheriff's department through the corrective deed that, you know, supposedly him and his family didn't own the land and stuff. And, you know, they were just doing all these crazy things that crazy old white guys normally do. And I'm saying it kind of laughingly because, you know, this is not the first time I've seen, you know, a situation like this. You know, I grew up in America like everybody else. There's a lot of corruption because, you know, people aren't perfect. You know, basically in America, we got ignorant people running around electing ignorant people to, you know, be their chosen, you know, their chosen ones, AKA priests in the temple, AKA leaders, AKA president, AKA.
I was waiting for the AKs to come out. Let's do it.
Huh?
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for the AKs. When we were warming up on the mic, I was like, where's Walter?
Right.
He's here now. Let's bring it. AKA.
Yeah, so you know, in Russell's situation, when I looked at him, because I remember the first day, I still remember we were standing in this garage, and we were working on the electrical on this project, and he was staying with some friends, and he told me the situation, and every time as I looked at it, and you got to remember, I went there to his home to live, and was literally through threat and intimidation and fear, I was attacked by this threat and intimidation and fear that was being cast by a man by the name of Don Phelps, who drives a yellow Ford pickup, an old, what is it, like a 1970 old yellow Ford pickup. And, you know, this old guy who I'd never met before in my life tried to threaten me with criminal trespass. Okay. And I'm like thinking to myself, let me just be nice to him and say, okay, I'm sorry, you know. I'd say whatever I had to, you know. This guy is old. He's cold. He didn't smile at me. He had nothing nice to say. He tried to specifically say that Russell Farnsworth was using me. I'm just thinking to myself, this guy reminds me of my great-grandmother. So, you know, because I grew up in the corrupt South, you know, around a bunch of white privileged idiots who, you know, who knows, who, you know, they had affiliations with the KKK or whatever. I don't know. You know, I did not spend a lot of time in my lifetime trying to get to know my family because they all had some issues. And I'm not saying that they chose that for their life. Just like, you know, it's the same thing with Don Phelps and Dan Duffin. I don't know these two guys, but on the outside looking in, they got some serious screwed up issues when they're going to try to steal somebody's land by lying to everybody and saying, include lying to the sheriff's department, trying to say that they own the land and Russell and his family don't own the land by using fraudulent, you know, paperwork filed into the county recorder's office to try to, you know, duck blind the whole mission and, you know, use the camouflage of the lies on the, you know, corrective deed to try to convince everybody in the community, including Russell and his family, his brother and his sister and everybody, try to convince them that, you know, it was just a life estate. It's just like, and I know Kevin, I know you asked me, like, why am I so passionate about it? So, you know, I see a lot of cases, but in Russell's situation, and this was before because I had encouraged Russell to, you know, let's get some security cameras with whatever little bit of money he had left. So we went and got these cameras from the Tractor Supply, because I was like, these guys are serious. You know, they're building fences along the easement. There's a yellow backhoe, you know, next to the holes, the crater holes in the road, you know, that I fell in, and, you know, I had to crawl out of it for crying out loud. I mean, it wasn't like some, you know, small hole or something. We're talking about a hole bigger and deeper than, you know, a 6 foot big guy, you know. Yeah.
Wow.
You know, all this stuff's happening, and I'm like, there's no way that they're not going to stop. They're going for gold on this one. And I told Russell, I said, It's probably going to be best if we get some cameras in case they try to burn the place down while we're gone one day or something. And sure enough, 2 years later, or I should say less than 2 years, about a year and a half later, because we set those cameras in September, October of year 2018. By the time year January 2020 rolled around, the cabin got burnt down. Now I've faced some homelessness while living here on the West Coast, and I was out of touch with Russell for some time. But midsummer last year, 2020, I called Russell to try to reconnect with him and find out what the situation with the case. I was like, well, I need to try to make a little bit of time that I finally conquered homelessness again. I was like, well, let me call him and see, where we're at. And that's when I had found out that not only did someone, or I should say three someones, burn down the old family cabin, which can be seen from Google. And I know we need to get some coordinates available for people to be able to go to Google Maps and see the old cabin before it was burned. But not only did they try to burn down the cabin and did successfully complete that mission and get the cabin burnt down, and obviously, in my opinion, kind of do Russell Farnsworth and his family a favor by burning it down, because now, the entire law enforcement community, intelligence community has to conduct an investigation, irregardless of whatever's happened at this point.
Right.
So, but they, someone, we and again, we can't prove if the neighbors set the fire or whatever, or who called who to set a fire, or who hired who or whatever, but someone set another fire 6 months later in midsummer there last year. And when I talked to the Cal Fire agent that's on the case, he was like, one fire, okay, well, shit happens. 2 fires, something's clearly wrong.
Right.
2 fires in 1 year, something's really, really messed up.
And I'm definitely not a fire expert. So what came to mind, my question was, could you tell if it was a controlled burn? Because I don't have the environmental pictures. It's surrounded by trees, dead wheat. You know what I mean? Like, just lighting things on fire catches other things on fire unless you control it.
Yeah. Well, I'll fill in some information about the 2 fires. So the one that burned the cabin down occurred in January, and it was just because of the time of the year, being winter, it was a low probability of the fire spreading. But the cameras that we had set up did capture 3 people on the property. They went into the cabin. One person apparently stole my knife collection, and then they left the cabin, and then it went up in flames within minutes thereafter. Nobody knows who the 3 people were. I've never seen them before. And, the pictures apparently were circulated all around law enforcement in the county, and nobody claims to know who these people are. But also, one of the people in the video, he went in, I had taken the water heater out of my trailer and connected it to the shower in the cabin so that I would be able to have hot water in the cabin. And that was a propane run little water heater. And so they disconnected that propane tank, and you could see one of the people carry it outside and move it away from the cabin. So they were, clearly concerned about not letting the fire spread. It would be the only reason, why they would remove that.
They hauled the propane tank out of the cabin before they lit the cabin on fire?
Yes.
Wow.
And
that sounds professional.
Yeah, and one of the people in the video had a huge set of binoculars hanging around his neck, so he was clearly the spotter. And they could be down at the bottom of the hill on Phelps property, just hanging out there for hours and watching and just making sure that nobody was home. And then once they were convinced that nobody was home, then they came up. The one person came up first and knocked on the door, And then when nobody answered, the other two came up, and then they burned the place down.
And you're quoting the video. You could actually see some of the guys or one of the guys knocking on the door.
Yeah.
The back door to the cabin, which was, I think that door actually faced north towards the mountain behind the cabin up north, right?
Well, they knocked on the front door.
Right there by the kitchen?
Yep.
Well, yeah, doesn't that front door face Oregon?
The front door faces east.
Okay, so the sun came up behind. Okay, I'll have to get my north, south, east, and west straight later on. Sorry about that.
All right, so I got to ask this. I got to ask this then. Where are we now with this? Or is this just sharing a story? But I guess what I'm looking for is what are you looking for? What are you looking to get out of this? Like, obviously, we're not trying to obstruct justice. We want justice, right? Definitely I'm going to have to sit on whether we leave that address you threw out there on. Probably not. But what is it you want to get? What are you looking to get out of this besides sharing your story, which I'm absolutely so grateful for your time and for your willingness? Cause I'm curious, like this has been going on for a while.
Yeah. About 3 years.
Yeah. And these goons are not going to give up. Russell's life is in danger. And, I told Russell, I said, the key to doing anything before he makes any moves at this point is going to be public awareness. So that way, if something does happen to him, everybody's going to know, geez, well, why was it that 2 years earlier that two neighbors by the name of Deppin and Phelps decided to, build and maintain barriers along the neutral zone, along the deeded easement, Gee, I wonder,
That's muscling. That's muscling out. That's like
muffling out.
That's like you got the whole pepperoni pizza and you see that little piece of pepperoni on the side and you're like, no, I need that too.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? And it's
well, what I'm hoping for is there's several things that I could use that would really make life easier and maybe help me get the upper hand over these people. And one would be, well, the fact that I believe that Don Phelps was behind the fire, at least the first fire on the property.
The one that burnt the cabin to the ground.
Right. And so I have a feeling that because his son works for the DA's office, the DA is never going to prosecute him no matter what. And so if there is evidence found that links him to the crime, I'm hoping that a whole bunch of people will write letters to the district attorney and tell them that they need to investigate and prosecute Don Phelps.
Right. And that's probably why. And that's probably why Dan was talking about. It's weird. Like you said, the CDF still is, you think, still looking into everything, right? Or Cal
Fire is still trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together because, like, to me, I'm like, man, if this was a murder situation, they would have already plastered people's pictures all over the news.
Yeah.
But in this situation, Russell and I put these cameras up that ultimately caught the three individual male suspects. And I've never seen the video. I'm only regurgitating information that Russell has shared with me so far. But, so Russell was away when it happened, when these three guys, burnt the cabin to the ground. And so Russell told the Cal Fire people where the video cameras were.
Yeah.
So now Russell does not have, I know he has seen the video, but he doesn't actually have possession of it. And I get a little confused. Well, if this was a murder situation or a rape situation,
right,
they would have plastered, but I'm like, well, you know what? Who knows? If it's such involved to the point where the power structure is potentially, the power structure of the county itself, the agents that work for the county,
right?
If there's people who at the county level and the power structure that are potentially connected or indirectly involved in the fire, then I could see why Cal Fire would want to not give Russell a copy of the video, or even give you the cameras back. Have they given you the cameras back yet, Russell?
No,
Not even the cameras.
Yeah, sometimes they don't though. So I will tell you in the military, I've been through like some serious investigations when it comes to stuff. And once they confiscate certain equipment, sometimes you never see it again. And that's usually sometimes because of like cold cases, or because sometimes, you know what I mean? Like the investigation can reopen or something. You know, you ever watch cold case files and all that? And they just keep the evidence boxed up. But it sounded like to me, what Russell was saying, it sounds like to me, really, you just want some justice. And I mean, is your intent to get that land back, or you just kind of moved on, but said, you know what, this is a chapter that I'm just not willing to close because, there's just too much that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of sentimental value to this property for me and my sister especially. I don't just know that my brother cares so much, but we definitely love this property. It's always something that we've kind of cherished, even though we haven't had a lot of opportunity to enjoy it over the years. It's always something that we've just loved having, and that we've spent a lot of great times there as kids. And after I passed away and my brother and sister are gone, the property is supposed to go to my two nephews and my niece, and they should then be able to enjoy the property or sell it for full value and be able to take the money and go buy something else somewhere else. So, I'm not that keen on living here anymore. I don't really care to be surrounded by these people.
Right.
But,
and hunted by them.
Yeah, but
or harassed by them.
My niece and my nephews deserve to have a property that is, valuable, that they can do what they want with it, and
or give you what you
settle things for them.
No, I agree. I mean, I personally would never want to reside there, but I would definitely feel like I'd be like, something's owed to me, and then at least I can go start a new family legacy somewhere else where I'm not surrounded by what seems like the bro system. You know what I mean? Like,
let me add something there too that helps Russell's position as to why the land's so important. This is his memories from his childhood. When he became disabled, he started migrating home.
Yeah.
No different than an animal, like an elephant. Okay. And I mean that because Russell's a really nice guy. He's like an elephant. He'll do anything to help you, and go through anything he's got to go through to help you. He's just as compassionate and as gentle and caring. And I'd have to say just, intuitive, into nature, and just, this guy's just trying to go home. He's disabled. He's running out of money. He ain't got no place to go. He's going to be homeless if he doesn't. And then when he shows up at his front door, aka the driveway leading to the cabin, it's blocked by a bunch of fences.
Yeah,
and he's living there now. He's living there now because he ain't got nowhere else to go.
So is this in the trailer that wasn't burnt down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I was to leave, I can't get the trailer out because the road is blocked, and
with firewood,
burn the trailer down, and then I'll lose that too.
Oh,
cool.
And look, the cabin wasn't even insured, and there was some speculation that people were trying to say that Russell burned down his own cabin to make it look, like something, and he collect on the insurance money. He didn't even. The place is not even insured because Russell could not afford to buy insurance for it.
Yeah, wow.
It's the same thing with his camper trailer right now. No insurance there either. He's just a sitting duck, unfortunately. And that's why I'm so impassioned to try to help him, because nobody's helping him.
Yeah, and that's commendable. And I think that's awesome. Let me ask you this, Russ.
I actually had somebody that was living with me, or living there in the cabin, for a few months. His name was Eric, and he was basically my fire insurance. It's just, somebody to help me keep an eye on the place, someone to look out for it while I was gone. But then he was stealing from me, and so I eventually had to kick him out. And then it was, I think, within 2 months, the cabin was burned down after I had kicked him out.
Wow.
And so that could have been revenge, maybe?
Well, I don't think so, just because he wasn't any of the people in the video, and I can't imagine anybody committing a felony for him.
Yeah, true.
You know, at least Don Phelps has money and could buy people to do such a thing if he wanted.
Wow.
Money and motive, because he threatened me with criminal trespass just for walking up to the cabin.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, why would two guys, you know, Dan Deppen and Don Phelps, be interested in threatening me or trying to prevent me? They don't know me, you know, they don't know me from anybody. You know, why, you know, and they're trying to prevent Russell from living up there harassment free just as much, because Russell's been there this whole time. It's like, you know, where's the motive? You know, who burned down the cabin? Where's the motive? What were these two guys doing? What were Don Phelps and Dan R. Deppen doing? You know, Dan R. Deppen was a real estate agent. What are they doing in the 2 years leading up to the cabin being burned down? They're blocking the road. They're building fences in the easement. They're digging holes in the road. They're tearing up the road, which is destruction of property. The sheriff's department's, you know, failing to act. You know, it's like, what the hell's going on here? You know, it's a clear and cut call for a sheriff's deputy to say, hey, this man by the name of Russell Farnsworth and any of his friends and family have a right to be here on Dan R. Deppen's land, because it's not Dan Deppen's land. That road is not his land.
Correct.
That road belongs to the Farnsworth family estate, aka property. And I'm so impassioned by it, because there's just so many things that point to Dan R. Deppen and Don Phelps Sr. being the two primary suspects as to why Russell's cabin got burned down. And we've got videotape of Don Phelps up at the cabin 2 years before it's burned down, walking around in an area where there's clearly no trespassing signs.
Wow.
I mean, this old guy's basically stalking Russell Farnsworth through the woods, pretending that, while he's busy being an old guy by the name of Don Phelps, he's pretending to maintain his fence. You know, he's using the whole "I'm going to go maintain my fence" thing to freaking spy on Russell.
Yeah, the video I have of Phelps trespassing on our property was, you know, just a short time after the place was burglarized and vandalized.
Back in 2018.
Right, and it looked like he was, you know, checking everything out to make sure he got what he paid for, essentially, you know. So somehow he knew that it had happened. Otherwise, why was he up there looking at everything?
Yeah, I mean, he's an old white guy. He should be sitting in the house in a rocking chair on the front porch, smoking a pipe.
There's not
enjoying the rest of his life, not stalking and, you know, Russell, what's your background? You're Indian, and what else?
And African American and Caucasian.
So yeah, you know, it's just like, you know, why is all this going on? Why is this old white guy running around the woods, freaking, you know, stalking some guy who is living at peace and is a peaceful inhabitant, has never crossed anybody the wrong way in his whole life? You know, it just nothing adds up. You know. So
you're saying
that's why I'm impassioned.
You're 100% sure he wasn't neighborhood watch.
That's a good.
I'm just messing. I'm just.
You need to go ask him, man.
Just messing.
No, we need to ask him. That's a good one. And the food, he almost probably used that as a story.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to make a few comments too about the second fire. That started in July, and I believe the person who started it was a person that I invited to come and stay on the property with me. So after that first guy, Eric, didn't work out, and I kicked him out. You know, I was trying to find somebody else to come up and help me keep an eye on the place. And so I met a guy named John, who, had a lot of tools and chainsaws and stuff, especially after I had just lost all of my tools and everything else I had. When the cabin burned down, I really needed somebody that had tools. So we had kind of talked about him moving onto the property and helping me out with things. And it turned out that he was kind of a psycho and probably a druggie, although he really didn't look it. He, by looking at him, you wouldn't suspect it. But I had talked to the guy's parents because I believe that he was responsible for the fire that started in July. I wanted to talk to his parents to see what they had to say about him, and they basically said that he was, a crazy guy and had a lot of weird delusions, and he only contacted them when he was in trouble, and he was always in trouble with the police. Apparently he's got a record, and he always ends up going back to the drug areas with our Wairika, Dunsmuir, and Redding, California. And so I'd kind of gotten all that information about him, and also, he had encountered Don Phelps at one point, and Phelps gave him his number and told him to call him. And so then apparently Phelps told him that I burned the cabin down, and I did it for the insurance money, and I was just using John, and yada yada yada. So then John apparently thought that I was a jerk and deserved to have the rest of my property burned down. And so I'm pretty sure that he was the person that set that second fire. And he threatened me with, quote, a world of disappointment 6 days before that second fire was started.
So that's where your information and beliefs come from, for the possibility of John maybe being the one that, being the suspect who lit the second fire in summer,
right.
July, year 2020. So it's interesting speculation.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I think that whatever Don Phelps told him, he decided maybe it was true, and I was a jerk. And
Don Phelps might have offered him some money to go and do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
and that second fire, what's actually kind of funny is that it burned about 30 acres of Don Phelps' property. It burned a little bit of our property, but not much. The wind kind of blew it the other direction. And since I was there when the fire started, I was able to dump water on it and kind of keep it from spreading onto our property too much, although it did still damage a lot of stuff. But I figure that the effort to put out that fire probably cost close to $500,000, maybe even more. I would say at least $200,000. There was 6 helicopters, I believe, and 3 airplanes. There were 2 bulldozers working on the side of the hill trying to contain the fire. There was a ground crew of probably 30 or 40 people, and then there was about 15 or 20 fire trucks parked on our property. So this was a huge effort to get that fire contained before it went out of control and burned a bunch of people's houses.
Wow.
And half of California and Northern California while it was lit. So Cal Fire is not going to just simply let go of it. I don't think the DA is going to be able to suppress evidence just because they own the power structure there under military control, the martial rule or anything. But and I asked the inspector Nick for Cal Fire. I asked him. He's like, man, you don't need to be worried because we've got the video backed up on multiple servers. So, I worry a little bit. I know everybody can hear that in my voice. But again, I just go back to if it were a murder case or a rape case, everybody's picture would be on the TV.
Right.
Absolutely.
In this situation, things are being kind of kept top secret in a sense. And I'm like, man, there's too many question marks,
Yeah, it just doesn't add up. And sometimes, and
it may be for the better. I'm not dissing law enforcement or the intelligence community in this country. Every organization's got a lot of issues and a lot of problems because it's people and they're ignorant. I get that. But Russell Farnsworth is in a very special, very very emergency kind of a situation where I think I think Russell deserves to have people, whether or not people can see, the 3 men in the video burning this cabin down. I just think that Russell deserves, yeah, a lot of shit happens to a lot of people. A lot of bad things have happened to me. I'm a victim of police brutality. We've all had encounters in our lives, but not everybody's had encounters, and not everybody can understand or comprehend what it's like to go through something like that. So I just really think that, the key to this whole thing for Russell to really win his case and to be safe at the same time is having a mass awareness. It worried me when Russell said that he went to the local newspaper there in Siskiyou County, and somehow, Russell, can you tell people what happened with that?
Well, nothing. They weren't interested in the story. So,
and we're talking about a fire that could have took out half of Florida, California.
Well, yeah, and I think when I contacted the newspaper, it was before the second fire had been set. So maybe they'll have an interest now. That
well, I think
a big fiasco there.
Well, I think that's
dollars.
I think that's actually a great segue. Because we are approaching about an hour and 11 minutes. And I do want to say this as we try to wrap up and close up. Is that one, everybody has a story. That's literally the catalyst. That is the why of Kicking It with KJ. And I think the huge why and the story from Dan and Russell is, everyone has a story, and a lot of us, we get tired of seeing the big guys muscle over the little guy, and sometimes all we want is we just want to see what's right happen. It ain't about money, but it's about what's right. And I do want to thank you guys for jumping on here. And what we're going to do is what I would ask is the listeners and viewers who check it out. If you got some thoughts, some ideas, first of all, share, right? Leave comments if you got some perspective. You're going to see the link to Russell's YouTube channel. Check it out. And
and subscribe.
And subscribe. And let me tell you, it's huge. It's huge. People don't understand the subscribe and share piece, because it's really, that's how you get this story out there. And I think that's the biggest thing I got out of this right now is we got to hear the story. We got to share the why, and we got to get it out. And if you guys feel like we need a part 2, we can absolutely work that down the road. But I do want to thank you for joining me. And Rusty, you're out there.
I'm here.
So, hey, thank you for bringing these two gentlemen on. And I'm absolutely not cutting you off. I just know that listeners analytically, they don't listen after a certain point. And so I feel like this is a good way to wrap this up. And if we need to get back on and there's something you're like, man, I really wish I would have said this after you listen to it, then let's jump back on. Does that sound like a good idea, guys?
Yeah, that sounds great. I think we were able to get most of the important information in there.
Right. And if we don't talk about this, you can jump on again and we can talk about some good news stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's not doom and gloom, your whole story. There's got to be some light at the end of the tunnel, because in a world that we're in today, we absolutely need some inspiration and some good stories as well.
Yeah.
So from KJ Studios, I'm going to wrap this one up. And I am so grateful for Rusty bringing these two gentlemen on, Dan and Russell. And I also call Dan Walter from The Big Lebowski, because he's so passionate, and I really enjoy that character about him. So from KJ Studios, we're out.